a state of being, a dynamic and really distinct moment within the musician's consciousness that produces feelings of human ecstasy, right? So it's also related to peak performance, or what we know in flow psychology, but it's really it's its own distinct phenomenon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Syncreate. This is a show where we explore the intersections between creativity, psychology, and spirituality. We view creativity very broadly, and one of our goals is to demystify the creative process as well as reimagine what it means to be creative. I'm Melinda Rothaus, and I help individuals and organizations bring their creative dreams and visions to life. So I'm coming to you today from Mystic Oaks, my creative studio and retreat space in the beautiful Texas Hill Country. And my guest today, I am very, very excited to have on the show Dr. Jeff Mims. He's a psychologist, creativity expert, musician, and researcher. Uh, Dr. Mims, you have a doctorate in humanistic psychology, a master's in rehabilitation counseling, and a bachelor's in film and cinema studies. So that's a broad array of disciplines right there. Your work focuses on the relationships between music, health, and well-being. And you're the operations lead at the Music and Expressive Arts Center of Oklahoma, which focuses on facilitating training and education at the intersections of music and mental wellness. So thank you so much for being here today. And today, of all days, I want to note we are recording today on Juneteenth, and I really appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. I know you've got a lot
Absolutely.
going on. So thank
Absolutely.
you for being here.
Thank you
So
so
I want to
much.
kind of give a little context for how we connected. So we were both in the same program, a doctorate in psychology with a specialization in creativity studies at Saybrook University, but we were never there at exactly the same time. So we knew of each other. We were connected on LinkedIn. I was aware of you and your work, but we recently finally got to meet in person at a creativity conference in Oregon. And we just immediately connected. We both are musicians. We both study psychology. So a lot of overlapping interests. And I was just really struck by your presence, your positivity. And through our conversations, I think we just both immediately recognized we got to collaborate. There's a lot to
Absolutely.
talk about here. So I'm so happy that this is coming together. So I want to start off by talking about the pocket and this idea of being in the pocket. But
Yeah.
for those who may not know, what is it? This is a musical term. It kind of comes out of the jazz world, but what does it feel like to be in the
Right.
pocket?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Rothaus, for having me. And I'm so excited, and I'm so glad that you asked the question about pocket, because I do get questions around pocket. What is pocket, Jeff? What is being in the pocket? And being in the pocket it's really that, literally that, a state of being, a dynamic and really distinct moment within the musician's consciousness that produces feelings of human ecstasy, right? So it's also related to peak performance, or what we know in flow psychology, but it's really it's its own distinct phenomenon, and it's specific to music experience. And when I first started out, it was actually only known as jargon at the time, right? So there weren't any academic writings or scholarly articles or journals. There was nothing like being in the pocket as an experience didn't exist in any of the academic writings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So started out as jargon, and now we have the research to go along with it. But it's basically talking about that moment that happens during music performance.
Yeah. So when a group of musicians are playing together and, kind of getting in sync, in resonance, and, as a musician, you can feel it when it's happening. The audience can feel it. What does it
Yes,
feel like emotionally and experientially for you as a
right.
musician to be in the
Oh,
pocket?
oh wow. Thank you for asking that, because a lot of times I get the question, and it's about the research, right? But you specifically
Right.
asked me, so what is it like for you? So for me,
Yeah.
I'll start there. Being in
Yeah.
the pocket for me is the most amazing experience, like lived experience you can have with music. And honestly, there isn't anything as a lived experience that you can compare it to. And I'll kind of go into it a little bit more. So what I'm talking about is this moment that happens on stage, right? This moment of where, I'm with my band, we've practiced, we've rehearsed, and then now here is the moment, right, where the rubber meets the road. And this moment is although it's a distinct moment, it can't really be measured with linear time. So it may go on moments, it may last an hour, it may just be, a minute or two, right? But it's a moment where we're all locked in and we're all in sync together. And in this moment, we lose track of time. We are completely and fully absorbed in that experience. And it's like the height of music performance for me. It really is. And then I'll just kind of go back to some of what the research says, like in
Yeah.
in the descriptions of the data, because we did a phenomenological study, qualitative phenomenology on this experience that happens with music. And some of the descriptions are like, if heaven is right here, then being in the pocket is like as far as you can go humanly possible,
Yeah.
as a lived experience, right, while you're alive, right? And then
Yeah.
other participants say, Jeff, I was just playing and I was going up and up and I was flying like a bird, right? And so it's distinct. It's a moment that sticks out, and it's just wonderful, honestly.
Yeah, it is. I can relate. I mean, in college, I sang in a all women's a cappella group, and so there's something, you can be singing and you're all doing your parts and you're kind of going along, but then when everyone like fully comes in to that
Yeah,
resonance, blending
yeah,
voices together, it is. It's like
absolutely,
the best feeling. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful. For me personally, I've had a lot of moments of being in the pocket as a musician in college and even earlier on. Like, my first major record deal offer was at 11 years old. I grew into a
Wow.
family of musicians. Come from that experience. I've really been about professional music all my life. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
these moments stick out. They are the moments that we look for, and anticipate and really hope that they'll happen. Um, yeah, so that's how it is
Definitely.
for me.
Well, so for sure, for sure. So you mentioned kind of your musical lineage, which I want to get into, but maybe going even, further back into your life story. I know you have a very interesting musical origin story that you told
Yeah,
me at the conference. Can you
absolutely.
share that with us?
All right. Yes, I'm happy to. So, all right. So humor me. I'm going to tell the story in pure story form, right?
Yes, do
So,
it.
all right, so let's go. Um, the band is in a moment of heightened performance. So this is a moment that's happening during the concert. So let's go there, right? They are rocking out, and the guitar player, he's really, really getting it, right? And this is a moment where the audience and the band, they're really feeling it, and they're just driving it, right? That's what's happening in the moment. Mind you, the very same time, the guitar player's wife is on the front row going into labor, right? So she's going into labor, she's pregnant and visibly pregnant, and the baby's kicking and the music's playing and the guitar player is he's getting it. And the way the story is told is that the baby, it just seemed like the harder the music played, the harder the baby would kick, right? And so the song comes to an end, and the wife gets her husband's attention on the guitar, and she's like, the baby's coming. And he's like, the baby's coming now? She's like, yes, the baby's coming now. And and he's like, okay, well, can we play one more song? And she's like, no, we can't play another song, the baby's coming now, right? So they go off, they go to the hospital, and that was the night that I was born. So that was my very first really live phenomenological experience with music, right? And then in thinking about that, going into a doctoral study of what will my topic be, what will I research, right? I
Mhm.
remembered back to, even thinking about the psychological questions around what's happening with the baby and that conversation in the womb. and the environment, the musical environment outside, right? Because
Yeah.
remember, this
Yeah.
he's listening to his dad. I'm listening to my dad, but and the band is and I'm kicking, and there's something there. But not only that, the other question was really phenomenological in that, my dad, what was so unique about that experience with music? What was happening in that moment that my dad didn't want to leave that moment? He wanted to hold on to it for
Yeah.
as long as possible, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
he's willing to delay his namesake, his firstborn son for just 5 more minutes in this experience, in this lived
Right.
experience. And so that
Right. One
really
more song.
fascinated. Yeah, just let me stay a little. We gotta go now. So yeah, so that's my origin story. And then and what's
I
also
love it.
interesting, yeah, is that it kind of makes sense, right? Because I know what my life became, right? I know where I've been with
Mhm.
music and the things that I've done, and so it just really fascinates me to this day.
Y Yeah, so you came into the world, you were already kicking to the beat. It's amazing. Yeah, and people always talk about, if you're gonna pursue graduate studies or really any form of work or inquiry, you gotta follow your passions, right? Because
Hundred
that's what's
percent.
gonna see you through. So, of course, it makes perfect sense to me that you
Yeah.
would have followed that thread of music, not only as a musician, but as a researcher as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really
Yeah.
needed something to nourish me, right? Because even
Yeah.
think about it, especially in our discipline, like psychology, it can be, it can be rigorous, right? The study part of it, there's addiction, there's so much behavioral therapies, and there are a lot of things out there. And for me personally, I needed something more, right? I needed something that was more holistic in terms of the psyche and mental wellness. And so studying music in this way was really nourishing. And so I get excited anytime I'm able to offer that, or help someone or guide them in that way as well, to connect deeply into their own self-conscious, in that state of consciousness, and drive awareness around what music brings and adds to our human experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's so much great stuff here. I want to talk more about kind of the healing potential of music, but I'm curious, I think the audience would love to hear a little bit more about your own musical lineage. I know you come from a long line of musicians. So tell us a little more about that.
Absolutely. So I play guitar, bass, a little bit of keys. I'm not proficient, but I can write songs and things like that. Keys, drums, singer. And I started. So that was how I was. Literally, that was the night I was born. So that
Yeah.
happened. But then fast forward, recorded at 4 and 5 years old, and and then my dad put us on the road. We were Little Jeff and the Mims family, gospel quartet, and we traveled and we sing, and we did that all the way up till I was about 13, when then I broke out at 13 and had my own family band, right? My own version of it.
Nice.
Took a break and played some sports in high school, and then in college, that bug bit me again, and then from
Mhm.
college up through now, I mean, it's just so much a part of my identity. Like, I can't escape music experience. I'll always do music. I'll always play somewhere, whether anyone's listening or not, right? But then also my dad and my mom. So my dad was a guitar player. My mom, classically trained pianist from age 8. Both grandparents are musicians. My grandfather on my dad's side, and grandmother on my dad's side, both singers, professional musicians, singers, and actually, uh, back in, I want to say, like, so I interviewed my grandfather one time about his experience with music, and he's telling me stories
Yeah.
about, leaving Alabama in 1948, and then
Mhm.
traveling with his band, and touring through the deep South, and going from place to place. And so music has been around us. My dad also played and wrote, produced, and recorded. So yeah, all that stuff is there. It's through and through. It's
It's
really a part
firmly
of our.
rooted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We love this
Yeah.
stuff.
So that
Yeah.
It makes me curious. So, having grown up so much in not only the musical world, but performing professionally, being on the road from a really young age, like, what did you learn from that experience growing up about people or about performance, or what were the lessons there?
Well, I want to say earlier on, even before I knew what was happening, right? I knew that it was something that connected with me. And I'll share a quick
Yeah.
story about my dad, right? And when he was 6 years old, because I interviewed him when I was doing my master's degree on music and culture, and he told me that the Pilgrim Wonders, which was my grandfather's group, they were practicing in the front room, and he said, "I'll never forget it. I was 6 years old, and Buddy had was playing a cherry red Gibson SG." He said, and the sound of it struck me. He said, and I knew then that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. A 6 year old kid. And the reason why really stands out is because, again, we're talking about my dad. We know what his life became after that, right? So there was a moment where he
Mhm.
really, really knew that this is what I want to do. But even throughout my life, there
Yeah.
are these moments of, just feeling connected, like, feeling happy. Anytime there was, we got together, we would pull out the guitars, we would sing original material, we would sing songs that my grandfather wrote, and so there's always this bonding and community and just really good laughter and fun that has happened in our home with music. But not only that,
Yeah.
if it kind of spreads, so the neighbors or like people know that you do music, or churches, or
Mhm.
like people know, and so people are wanting a part of that experience, right? And so it's something that you just kind of always do. It's just kind of always around us, and then to use it with intention to create memories, and for weddings or funerals, like it's a go-to. It's really a part of our experience and has been for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love this idea of, music as a way to connect, with family, with community, with the broader world. I mean, it's almost a cliche, but, they say music is the universal language, right? And we've talked about
Absolutely.
this actually in other episodes, like even instrumental music can be so evocative and can communicate so much, without words. So there's a real power
Absolutely.
there. So that kind of leads me. So, a lot of what you do is to help people heal through music. And I'm curious, like, how do you see the relationship between music and healing? Like, how does that work? And how does that play into your work at the Music and Expressive Arts Center?
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned it just a minute ago about having these feelings among music, around music experience, right? And so like
Yeah.
what a lot of times what happens with music is, like let's say, and there are studies done on like sad songs and why it produces happy feelings,
Hmm.
right? Or that human connectivity. And then even in psychotherapy, we know that being seen and heard is often the goal, right? And so music
Right.
has the capacity to articulate feelings and emotions even better than what we are feeling, and we feel connected and seen and heard, like through these experiences. And so, what I've realized is that a lot of times these moments that happen with music get missed, right? And so, like if you go to a
Yeah.
concert, or you go to a concert, and then it's produced these moments where you like maybe crying your eyes out, right? And so you're experiencing a sort of catharsis, psychological catharsis that you really needed in that moment, and then you feel refreshed after you leave. Well, what happens is those moments get missed because I feel like we don't really fully know what we have with music. We don't really understand it
Mm.
fully in all of its glory. It's because
Hmm.
it's always around us, you know what I mean? And so we have these moments, but we don't I don't want to say capitalize, but we don't emphasize that those are the moments that we should really talk through, and try to process really what's going on within us psychologically. And so that's one of the things
Yeah.
that we try to do at the Music and Expressive Arts Center of Oklahoma, is to create these moments with intention that they'll produce some of what's going on in your consciousness, bring it to your level of awareness, and then we process it psychologically. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
So really just putting some intention into it and reflecting on it, right? That's something we talk about a lot in this podcast is like how do we understand and reflect on our own creative process?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I love this. I love this.
Absolutely. Li-
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one thought I had was kind of like a guided meditation, right? So it's with
Yeah.
intention. It's a with the intention to unplug and go inward, and so it's a
Yeah.
similar sort of guided experience using music with intention to create those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. So music is it affects us on so many levels. As musicians, the experience of being in the pocket, we feel that, the audience feels that. And then there's this whole realm of, healing just through listening and experiencing music.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, so coming back to this idea of the pocket, right, which is kind of a peak group creative experience. So what about people who've never picked up a musical instrument? Like, how can we understand this kind of group flow experience and apply it maybe in context outside of music, say in organizations or groups of people working together?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think before we do that, we have to understand fully what like pocket is. So, for example,
Yeah.
for the study, I selected professional musicians, right, which would
Uh huh.
be like the top of their game. You know, musicians who have put in their 10,000 hours and traveled
Yeah.
like for 5 years. Like this is their life, right? And
Mhm.
the reason in doing it that way is because I understood, even bracketing my biases as a musician, I understood that there's a quality of music performance, or of uh, proficiency, musical musician proficiency, to enter that experience more easily. Right? These are the ones who can
Yeah.
snap their fingers. Like my dad even told me about Jimi Hendrix. He was like, Jimi Hendrix, when he took the stage, he was in the pocket, like, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so there is a process of getting to the pocket, and then there are levels of pocket experience, right? I
Yeah.
mentioned an example before about a saxophonist named Kenny Garrett, who there was a moment he had on stage where he was just playing and playing, and like everyone was engulfed in the moment. And I interviewed two different participants, and they both, like, without knowing each other, mentioned this experience, right, with Kenny Garrett on
Uh-huh.
stage. And they said that, Jeff,
Uh-huh.
this moment, we looked at our watches, and 2 hours had flown by, right? Because it
Wow.
was like, we're talking like one, like a continuous tune, right? And so yeah,
Yeah.
so there are levels to pocket, right? But I do understand that people want to understand that, this dynamic experience, and so it is specific to music, but the qual like, as a lived phenomenon, of course it can be experienced
Mhm.
outside of music. Think about someone who is just in their zone, right, at the top of their game.
Yeah.
They've practiced, they've done what it takes to get to that moment. They've had their ritual to have that distinct
Yeah.
moment of lived experience that really stands out. And so even creating that among groups, there is some individual work that has to happen, right? Because it's kind of a mutual tuning in. Dr. Kylie Locker
Yes.
talks about that, making music together, right? So if it's a team or a
Yeah.
group, we're essentially trying to make music together, and it is a process of
Exactly.
fine tuning and stirring the pot until you to reach that moment. But it is definitely possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about it in my work with kind of leaders and teams, and it's like, everybody has to be on the same page. There has to be a sense of trust and connection and communication for people to be able to collaborate
Absolutely.
effectively, right? So I think
Absolutely.
there's a parallel there for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely.
Great. Anything else on the topic of pocket or music and healing? Anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
Sure, sure. So, I'll just kind of go through some of the constituents that the pocket experience produced. So, like, now we're really And so, one constituent we have that big in the pocket is a spiritual and dynamic embodied energy with its own
Mhm.
directedness that develops outside of the musician themselves, right? Who are aware of the experience in the very moment that it happens. Okay, so there's that one. There's also
Uh-huh.
this connection among the audience and the musician ensemble
Mhm.
between them, right? There's this connection
Yeah.
and this dynamic embodied musical energy. There is the loss of time. So there's a time awareness disruption. So, like, I lost track of time. Is the best time I ever
Yeah.
had. That is also a part of pocket experience. There's also, this was the biggest one for me, like, because I didn't anticipate that I would like find something like this, and that is the balancing of contrasting feelings happening simultaneously within the pocket experience. And so let me give you an example of what I mean. So one participant described, she said, to be in the pocket is to like have calm but fire in your belly energy,
Mm.
and that equals bliss in the moment, right? So think about how that is different, but it makes sense, right? In this dynamic moment that happens with music experience, these very contrasting feelings are resolved, and so there's this dynamic equilibrium that happens within pocket experience, which is deeply meaningful and really important for the potential of what we could see, like this conversation of psychology and music and healing. Like, there is something there, that a rabbit hole that we can explore further, right? And
Definitely.
then
I love that because I think we spend so much of our time, like, just running around. We're so busy in our lives and there's so much anxiety and all this, but like, this is a different kind of experience. And there's like as you say, like a calmness, but then
yes,
there's this incredible energy flowing at the same time.
yes, and only to equal bliss. Like, the best word to describe
Yeah.
it was bliss.
Yeah.
Like, so I
Yeah.
I thought that that
Yeah.
was really cool, and to have that in the data, I was super excited about that. And then the final one was a subtle yet foundational for the completion of aesthetic experience. And what that means is like, you have a basic rhythm: 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now, just imagine all the other music that you can place in between those counts, right? And
Yeah.
so that's subtle, but it's so foundational for the completion of this aesthetic experience. And aestheticism in art deals
Mhm.
with, its meaning, and its is wrapped in its beauty. So because of its beauty, that's the reason why it means so much to me, for its beauty alone, right? So,
Yeah.
and so for it being in the pocket, it's subtle, has subtle yet foundational quality for the aesthetic completion of aesthetic experience. And so, yeah, so that's what it says according to science, and we're still learning about what it means for the improvisational solo and continued creativity and more music and more experiences. So
Yeah.
it's fun stuff.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really breaking some new ground here with this research, and hopefully others can kind of follow in that path, right?
Yeah,
And expand our understanding of these kinds of,
absolutely.
peak musical experiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing I just kind of want to say to that very point is that music experience. So for people that music connects with, the people that it works for,
Mhm.
people who connect, they
Mhm.
connect deeply, right? And so it's not a
Yes.
little thing. It's not something that should be ignored, honestly, psychologically, because it's meaningful to a lot of us. Absolutely is.
Absolutely. And that's something I really believe strongly. We think about creativity and sort of artistic creativity, or at a certain level, which is great. People who doing whatever their medium is in a professional way. But then there's also playing music or making your art or expressing yourself just for the pure joy of it, right?
Yes.
And I think that
Yes.
sometimes gets overlooked, and it's so important.
Absolutely. It's so funny you say that, because a lot of the questions I get too is like, I think sometimes we forget that happiness and lived experience is science as well, right? So, people
Yeah.
may have a preference on quantitative over qualitative research. Jeff, show me the science. Well, lived experience is science, right? And then also too,
Yeah.
happiness on a psychological spectrum. Happiness is like the desired state across for many across the human experience. And so,
Yeah.
throw some music in there. If music produces moments of happiness or moments that speak out, then we can measure, in any way, in any methodology you choose, we can measure what's going on with the body and the mind in those moments.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Dr. Mims, thank you so much for being with us today. And if people want to learn more about you, your music, your work, where's the best place to find you?
So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, Dr. Jeff Mims on LinkedIn. Post ton of research there. You can also follow us, the Music and Expressive Arts Center of Oklahoma, on LinkedIn as well. We do one event a month. We are committed to creating these moments and creating programming around these types of the science and the experiences, so people can really experience what this is like. But yeah, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and we're happy to meet anyone. We connect with people from all over the world, so we're happy to have you as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And I look forward to our future collaborations. I think we're looking forward to doing a LinkedIn Live together soon as well. So
Yes, yes,
stay tuned. Yeah.
absolutely, and more cool stuff
All
coming.
right. So much more. It's
Yeah,
great. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to be with us today. It's really wonderful to talk to you and hear about your work. So
Dr. Rothaus, thank you so much. It's really my pleasure. Thank you so much.